Build Show friends, we're talking generators today. Y'all know that I built a brand new house, right? Now, when I built my new house, I wasn't necessarily planning on a backup generator. I was thinking about a bunch of things. Solar, backup battery. I thought in the meantime I might do a plug-in, but here's my old house. And before I show you the new house and what I actually did, on this video, I'm gonna talk about what I did before and what I'm doing today. I'm gonna talk about some of the options that I considered: solar, battery, very large liquid cooled generator, and I'll also review what I ended up doing and kind of why I did that. So today's build show is sponsored by Champion. Let's get going. Okay, so my old house. I lived here for 15 years, a long time, and I lived in this house when Hurricane Harvey hit in 2017. It was really not fun. It was summertime, hurricane season. It was hot. My house was super uncomfortable. I lost everything in my fridge and freezer. So it was after that that I was like, I gotta get a backup generator. I ended up installing this guy, this Champion here. This is not my house anymore, by the way. Thank you for my neighbors for letting me show you this. But I installed that in December of 2020, and 2021 in February, just like 60 days later, is when that crazy storm hit. And I was at work checking on things, making sure houses were okay, that sort of thing, driving in my four-wheel drive pickup truck. And my wife called and said, hey, the power went out in the neighborhood, but 30 seconds later, power back on. We were money. I was a hero. My wife was a little like, why are we spending all this money? Champion gave me the generator, full disclosure, but I still had to pay for an install. And, it was a couple $1,000 when it was all said and done. Well, it wasn't that much, but at least $1,000 for electrical change out and several $100 to get the plumber out. So when we built this house, my initial thought was solar on this roof, because we're mid-afternoon here. You can see I'm getting bombarded with the sun. And then I was thinking backup batteries in the garage space here was kind of my initial thought. And as I was planning the house and figuring out what to do and how to do it, I built a nice house, but my budget was taxed. And it was going to be expensive. The solar alone, $10K, the battery backup, $10K plus. And what happens if those solar cells are snowed over? You're not making power. You could easily run out. So in the end, what I did when I first moved into this house was I put a standby generator in my garage here, a Champion Tri-Fuel, which is like 10,000 when it's running on one fuel and 8,000 when it's running on another. Pretty sizable. And I did a plug over here by my meter and my panel box, and I basically just plugged it in right here. And I never needed it in the 6 months that I've lived here. But the thing that got me was thinking back to how my wife, when she called me, I wasn't even here when the automatic transfer switch clicked over on the other house and we were good to go. But to be honest, I wasn't sure that the same size generator I had in the other house would work for this house. Now, this is the Champion 14 kW generator. It's really not that big. You can see size-wise, it's pretty small little guy, really. 750 some cc's. It's got 2 little batteries in here that will charge all the time, and then we'll help it to fire up when the time comes. I haven't even put the oil in yet. I got some 5W30 synthetic is what it calls for. But long story short, I was worried that this size generator would power my house sufficiently. My old house, natural gas, everything. I had Rinnai tankless on the outside that really just needed a small 110 power to fire up. My generator did that. I had a gas furnace, just needs a fan running, another small 110. I only had one 3-ton AC. It was like a 2,000 square foot house. This house, I'm just shy of 3,000 square feet here. I've got garage AC. I've got an AC up, an AC down. I've got a heat pump water heater. I've got an induction cooktop. I'm all electric. I have no gas. And because I didn't have any gas, I didn't pull a gas permit. And I kept thinking the whole time, I don't know that I want to spend the money on a gas meter if I don't have gas appliances. So funny enough, this is a remodel. This is my original slab on the house. This is the cradle that I didn't remove. The gas company cut the gas line at the curb, basically. So this is a dead line. But I didn't call for inspections. I didn't get a gas meter. And honestly, I don't want to spend $30 a month in natural gas service charges just for the privilege of having natural gas. So what I decided to do for this house instead of those alternatives was to go with a Champion 14 kW propane powered. These are my propane tanks. I'll tell you about those in a minute, with an automatic transfer switch. Now there's a lot of reasons to like Champion, but one of my concerns when I initially thought about this, especially considering my old house, was, is 14 kW enough? You know, if you look at their specs, I actually printed them so I could get my stats correctly. You know, on 120 volt power, this generator is pumping out 116 amps at 120, 58 amps at 240 volt. Pretty sizable, but if I was really cranking at this house and everything was going, I would exceed that. Well, guess what? Champion has a solution for that I didn't know about. I'm not sure how long this has been on the market, but they call it the Axis system, and they have these load controllers that I haven't installed yet. We're about to, but they look like this. They come in a little module here. They'll handle up to a 50 amp 220 line, and you're going to end up using these at any location that you think might overtax your system. Now you can have a dealer or an electrician help you figure this out. That's what I did. I had Rick, my electrician, help me figure this out. But here's what this module looks like. This looks like that cutoff switch like you have on the outside of your AC, your disconnect, but it's not. What it is it's a relay that's going to talk to your Champion panel. And what it's gonna say is, based on the priority level that you set, it's gonna run what's available for power. So for instance, I ran everything on my Champion 200 amp automatic transfer switch to the secondary panel here, which is my 220 lines, and this is my emergency circuits, let's call them. But I also have some other things that are not on here that those modules are going to help me out with. In other words, as long as this is underpowered and I still have excess power, it'll automatically turn on additional things, like, for instance, my heat pump air conditioner, my Mitsubishi system for my upstairs, which in emergency, I could heat and cool the house with the downstairs one, no problem. The kids could even come downstairs if needed. But if I've got plenty of power, why not power both? And that's what that module's doing. Also, I've got an 80-gallon electric heat pump water heater that will have 80 gallons of hot, and it'll keep it a long, long time. But I'd rather have heat in the house than make new hot water. So I'm prioritizing my heating and cooling, my heat pump for the house first, before my heat pump for my water heater. And that's what that Axis load management system is going to do for me. It's going to allow me to prioritize what's happening. And of course, you know this already, but these automatic transfer switches, I got to take the cover off so you can see it, will basically automatically switch over. So when the power from the city goes out and this goes dead, this switch is going to flip over in a couple seconds after this is started and is running, and we're good to go. Couple reasons why I ended up with this. I actually did first consider a liquid cooled. Now Champion only makes air cooled, and you're going to see on the end there's kind of a fin system over here. This is going to blow air out of here, or in here, I guess, maybe, as the case may be. And it's going to cool this engine bay and keep everything running. But if we were in the desert Southwest, we'd have to be cautious so that we're not, overheating, because if it's going to be well over 100, we could overheat our Champion air-cooled system. I looked at liquid-cooled. A couple things really scared me off. Number one, they're like double the price. These Champions, the smallest size unit, like $3,000, the medium size, which is 12.5 kW, around $4,000, and the big dog with this 14 kW with the automatic transfer switch and a 200 amp load center, under 5K. You can have it delivered right to your house, including this little concrete pad that you've got here. Everything you need really to get rolling. And then you just need your electrician and your plumber, and you can kind of general contract the install yourself. And those licensed trades can get the permits that they need. Or, of course, you can have a dealer do it. And by the way, Champion has a great dealer selector online. There is a dealer right here in Leander outside of Austin that I could have used if I needed to. But for me, as a general contractor, I just got the electrician and the plumber lined up. Plumber hasn't been here yet to get my tanks, my propane tanks going. But I was able to basically contract everything myself after this got delivered right to my driveway. Now let's talk about propane versus natural gas for a minute. My old house, natural gas, I already had the meter. It was a no-brainer just to go ahead and connect that and call it good. This house, no natural gas meter, propane tank. Now, I thought originally about getting, or not originally, I was thinking very heavily about getting a 250-gallon above ground propane tank. However, there's some restrictions about where you can put those, both in the city where I'm located and in my neighborhood. And you know, this neighborhood's a natural gas neighborhood. So for ease of everything, for me, I just thought, you know, and for cost, let's just do these they call these 100-pound propane tanks. And in general, propane tanks can only be filled to 80%. So these 100-pound tanks can hold about 20 gallons each. And this generator on propane, by the way, Champion has great specs online where you can check all this out yourself. This 14 kW uses at 50% load 1.6 gallons per hour. So one of these propane tanks is a hair over 12 hours worth of propane as this thing's churning along. Now if it's at full speed, it's using 2.6. So I'm going to go through more propane. But basically, with these 6 tanks that I've got here, I've got 3 days worth of fuel for this unit running at 50% power. If I was worried that the outage might be longer, I could also, because I built such an efficient house, I could also very easily come out here and turn this thing off for 6 hours in the middle of the day or 8 hours overnight and extend that range. I'm also thinking, as I've gotten to this point, why not just get 3 or 4 more of these 100-pound tanks? Let's say I'll have 10 of them lined up. They'll be daisy chained. The plumber can connect them all together with some hard pipe and then pipe that back to here for my propane fuel. And then I've got at least, let's say, 5 days, 6 days worth of propane. Another reason why I like propane, besides saving the $30 a month on the natural gas service fee, is I never have to worry about someone turning the lines off for me. You know, the natural gas lines have been turned off in the past. Here in Austin, when we had that big freeze, they turned it off in some parts of the city. I also heard a lot of people say they had really low pressure and they're having problems with some of their appliances because of that really low natural gas pressure. So I thought, well, you know, it's kind of a win-win. I'm not spending 30 bucks a month for the privilege of natural gas. I'll get these tanks, I'll pay for them once, cry once, as the saying goes, and then I'm good to go. But I do, you know, take a little bit of risk on some kind of an extended outage. If we had 2 weeks without power, I'd really be throttling it down if I've only got 5 days worth of fuel standing by. I'm sure you realize this, but just to clarify, propane does not go bad in these tanks. It's not like gasoline that you need a fuel stabilizer, and even with a fuel stabilizer, gasoline's only got, you know, a year or less of shelf life. Propane, it can be in that tank for many, many years. No problems, no issues. And these tanks really make it simple for me because I can literally put these in the back of my truck, go to a fuel station for propane, which is right by my office, and have them refuel for me. So, long story short, smaller unit than what I could have done. Had I done liquid cooled, I might have gone up to like a 24 kW, but I think I'm going to be just fine. This is going to do everything I need. It's less than half the cost, maybe even bordering on a third of the cost. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but the size on the liquid cooled ones are also really darn big. At least twice, if not more of size, and really darn heavy. For this little guy, it was around 400 pounds or so for this. We had 2 guys with those appliance straps, Johnny and Nathan on my team. They literally just put some appliance straps underneath it, walked it into the backyard, dropped it onto this preformed slab, and I was good to go. That was pretty awesome. That's hard to beat, guys. You're going to have to use some type of equipment when you go to the liquid cooled. Now, if you got the money, if money's no object for you, I totally see the liquid cooled. On the battery option, going back to that for a minute, I don't know, you know, the one thing that really swayed me against the battery as I started looking at it was kind of like your iPhone or your cell phone. Batteries only do have a certain amount of limited life. And I never got a perfectly straight answer how long those, let's say, Tesla Powerwalls or other battery manufacturers out there are going to last. But I had a real sense that by the time year 10 rolled around, you're definitely not getting 100%. Maybe you're only getting 50 to 75% capacity. And at this point, there's no good recycling program for those. And now you've got this giant thing on the wall in your garage as well, which could be a little bit of a fire hazard. And I stayed in my last house 15 years. I hope to be in this one at least that long. I don't have any of that when I've got this here. I just need some propane tanks. You know, if I don't have an outage, I doubt I'm going to have to ever really do anything to those propane tanks. And this guy, the only real maintenance that I've seen on their website is change the oil after 100 hours of runtime. So there's hardly any maintenance that needs to happen out here. And now I'm good to go. It's standing by anytime I need it. In the end, guys, I think Champion's a pretty amazing choice. And the last thing I want to mention on Champion is that I did a little Consumer Reports research. They ranked #1 out of all the other brands out there. And the only thing that Consumer Reports really knocked them on was noise. But interestingly enough, there was no other competitor that they didn't give the same exact score for noise. I had the same exact model at my other house. And yeah, it's loud if you're right next to it, but inside the house it was no big deal. And to have power when no one else has power, or when the power's out, trust me, it's not a big deal to have 63 decibels on the outside of your house humming along when no one else has power. It really, really is a big deal. And for me, being a hero is what it's all about, that automatic transfer switch. Guys, big thanks to Champion for sponsoring today's video. I truly believe for the value, for the price, they're the best out there. I've had great success with their entire line. I think I own just about one of everything these guys make at this point, and I've had great success. Everything starts from me first time around. I'm going on 4 or 5 years now of owning some of their portable generators. They're all awesome. I'll put a link in the description for everything we talked about from Champion below. But shoot a comment below if you disagree with me on any of my points on solar with battery backup, or liquid cooled versus air cooled, or natural gas versus propane. I'm curious if you disagree. Totally fine to disagree. These are my opinions. You're entitled to yours as well. But stay safe out there, guys. Think about this before there's a problem, like I did, and you'll be a hero. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.